The Trump-made Russia crisis that has been engulfing the White House this week is actually taking a major turn right now. President Trump is inviting Vladimir Putin to the White House for a new separate special meeting. The overture comes as Donald Trump's own intel chief concedes today that Trump didn't take the right approach in his big meeting with Putin this week, saying he would have done it a different way to avoid giving Vladimir Putin power by holding this now very controversial meeting without U.S. national security staff in the room.
Asked me how that ought to be conducted. I would have suggested a different way, but that's not my role. That's not my job. So it is what it is.
It is what it is. Coates also making waves by admitting he was kept in the dark when Putin's top officials went into that Oval Office meeting without national security staff. And that was, of course, another very odd Russia-related meeting that Trump held. The White House is pushing forward, though, with this other meeting amidst nearly universal condemnation of the Helsinki summit, which even Trump acknowledged by walking back 3 different major Russia positions this week, including the White House here finally tamping down a provocative attempt to undercut Obama's former U.S. ambassador to Russia, because there was this suggestion that he could face a grilling from the Kremlin. Here's that whole progression.
He feels very strongly about it, and he has an interesting idea. I think that's an incredible offer.
The president's going to meet with his team, and we'll let you know when we have an announcement on that.
Donald Trump has now disagreed with that proposal. Now they say it was made in sincerity, to use Sarah Huckabee Sanders' quote. It was made in sincerity, but something they disagree with and they will not be pursuing.
Something they now disagree with. Donald Trump did cheer that offer, though, when he was at Putin's side, then leaving it to aides to declare this disagreement, just like his spokesperson had to spin this odd exchange about Russia also this week.
Is Russia still targeting the U.S., Mr. President?
Press, let's go. Make your way out.
No, you don't believe that to be the case?
I had a chance to speak with the president after those comments, and the president said thank you very much and was saying no to answering questions.
Just no to answering questions. Of course, those walkbacks pale next to the one that is powering so many jokes and memes this week, including this parody hat spoofing Trump's reference to a double negative to spin his embrace of Putin's defense at the summit.
The sentence should have been, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be Russia. Sort of a double negative. So you can put that in, and I think that probably clarifies things pretty good by itself.
So here's where we are. Donald Trump forged his entire public brand on firing anyone, fighting anyone, and never apologizing or backing down. His whole aura was reality star meets Tom Petty. Won't back down. Gonna stand my ground, and I won't back down. That was the narrative. This week, of course, exposes the giant exception. When it comes to Putin and Russia policy, Trump won't fight. He looks like he's afraid Putin will fire him. He spent 4 consecutive days backing down and explaining himself. And this quite blatant departure from Trump's normal brand has many serious people asking disturbing questions this week. It has the New York Times front page with an article questioning what happens when treason may hit the Oval Office. Because if Russia is the one topic that turns Trump from a relentless Tom Petty fighter to a kind of a bumbling, flinching, quailing capitulator, a sort of a C-3PO of foreign policy, then people are going to ask why. Just like tonight, people are asking why this widely condemned week of Donald Trump's foreign policy towards Russia is being capped at this hour with this developing news of a dramatic red carpet invite for Vladimir Putin to the White House. I am joined now by former Ambassador to Morocco Mark Ginsburg, who called Monday's meeting a shame and surrender summit, a former New Jersey U.S. Senator Robert Torricelli, Democratic strategist Aisha Moody Mills, and Sam Seder, host of the Majority Report and an analyst for us. Ambassador, I begin with you. Why is this happening?
Well, it's happening largely because of the duress that Trump has received from some supporters, particularly Newt Gingrich and a couple of others on Fox News. That got under his skin. It's not because of the substance. You know, he actually is convinced that what he did in Helsinki was not the equivalent of a Neville Chamberlain surrender or an appeasement of Vladimir Putin, but that they accomplished something. What he, however, is saying to the American people, Ari, is that Mr. Putin has something on him. that there's a reason why this obsequious kowtowing to Putin permits the President of the United States to disregard the calamities that Putin has inflicted on the United States and the international community. And so, in my only humble belief, in the efforts that Trump has done to engage Putin separately and away from any prying ear of any aid, it's because Mr. Trump is fearful that Mr. Putin has something on him.
Well, and that's been one of the questions that's getting mainlined, because Putin himself was asked about it both at the summit, Senator, as well as in the Fox interview he did, which we're going to be touching on later in the hour. When you look at all this, it seems like even if you forget collusion and that investigation, which is not done and doesn't need to be prejudged, something very concerning is happening right now between these two men while he's president. In some ways, it's more profound for national security than perhaps what may or may not have occurred in 2016.
It actually, to the casual observer, would appear that Donald Trump is worried that somehow now he's offended Putin by his recent walkbacks and is now trying to make amends.
You think that's what this offer is tonight?
It certainly, to a casual observer, would look that way. But rather than answering your question, I want to answer a question that Brian Williams asked of my favorite former colleague last night, Bob Kerrey.
Do you want to just walk over there and do his show instead?
I
want to do a lot of things,
I'm
Senator.
going to do it through you.
I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that when I get assignments around here. Rather than taking this assignment to guest host, I'm going to go to the beach. Go ahead, though.
He asked Bob last night, noting that the real heroes of Watergate were Republicans. Where's the Howard Baker of this crisis? And it occurred to me, hearing about this new summit today, Mitch McConnell, Orrin Hatch, Grassley, people in the twilight of their careers, you're either never going to be forgiven for being silent these weeks, or if you speak up now, never forgotten. Mitch McConnell needs to go to the president and say, when Vladimir Putin comes back to this country, for the sake of American security, our credibility with our allies, the credibility of your office, the functioning of this government, you are not to meet with him alone. And if you do, you cannot count on me when the report comes out from Mueller. Make it clear and put it on the line. Otherwise, what ally is ever going to share with intelligence with us about Russia again? And how are we going to restore credibility to this administration?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I just want to step back for a minute. And, you know, we need to be asking some deeper questions about the president's behavior and why.
You mean the kind of questions that Brian Williams asked?
Well,
Am I ever going to live that down?
No, I know the kind of questions. The questions that are worth answering.
The ones that we've raised on this show that are worth answering. But it really, we should all just be alarmed, personally offended, but our country is in jeopardy right now. This is not just a political issue, and we often get on TV and we politicize this, right?
You're talking about what is at stake for our national security.
What is at stake for our national security is what the Republicans on the Hill should care about, and the fact that we have this man who is behaving erratically. He doesn't seem to have any kind of memory, a lack of empathy. There's something that is just very pathological about the way that he is operating, that there's a reason why we have three branches of government. If there is any moment in time that Congress should step up and say, wait a minute, something about judgment isn't right. We actually need to exercise better judgment here. They should, but we saw today that the Republicans are cowards in Congress because they refuse to even just to vote and say that we support our intelligence community and we agree and we know it to be true that the Russians have meddled. So I don't know if we're going to get to where you think that we should be.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, even if you back up just to the lack of transparency throughout this entire process is problematic from a democratic standpoint. I mean, not, you know, small d, democratic. Like the idea that these two men are meeting without any record whatsoever is just, and without any notion of what the agenda is just fundamentally wrong before you even get to these second and third order questions, which, you know, are increasingly becoming first order questions.
Which is a question that conservatives often like to pose in the legal process, which is, if you're not guilty, why are you hiding?
Well, yes, and also you're the president you're a democratically elected president. When you go in and you meet with this world leader, we have a right to be aware of what is being discussed, at least in broad strokes.
Well, I would push you on that and say the national security apparatus has a right. The entire public is not always going to be read in on the classified part.
The entire public
but
is
the
not,
notion,
but
to your point, the notion that the National Intelligence Director, sitting down with our own Andrea Mitchell tonight, is saying in public, perhaps as a signal to people that something's off,
Yes.
I am being kept out of the loop on this, and I know more than the president, and I'm supposed to be guarding our nation's secrets in a nonpartisan way.
Right.
Why is he being kept out?
Well, I mean, that's the question, and I'll tell you, the fact that he's going public with this, I think it's pretty stunning. I mean, there's a lot of red flags being waved around in a lot of different quarters right now that I think, there's this sort of like soft attempt. Maybe it's getting harder.
Yeah, but it's soft. It's soft.
It's way too soft.
When we look back at this historically, people are going to say, I have great respect for General Mattis and for Pompeo. History is going to ask, where were you? If the United States' security is now being compromised, the credibility of the office of the President of the United States is clearly at issue. Where were you? And to all of you, and I go back to Mitch McConnell about meeting with the President, about insisting that there be someone else in that room, and I go to the President's cabinet. Are these jobs so valuable? Is being in the cabinet so important to you that you would allow the country to be compromised and allow your own reputation to be sullied? Perhaps not today, but in the eyes of history. Is there not a Howard Baker in the entire United States government?
Well, let me take that to.
Is there not a patriot in the entire United States government? I mean, that's the challenge, right? So the entire cabinet is completely neutered right now.
We already know the answer to this question. Mitch McConnell wouldn't even was going to punish politically anyone who mentioned this prior to the run-up of the election. Mitch McConnell has made his bed. I don't think there is going to be this moment where Mitch McConnell all of a sudden becomes a different person.
Right, and that goes to whether people are not only standing by, but potentially allegedly welcoming the kind of interference that actually subverts the democracy. That is a type of, as charged in the Mueller indictment, an international election-related conspiracy. Ambassador, as someone who's served, I'll take the question to you, and I'll play for you some of the reaction to something that was the big story earlier today, before, again, as we're reporting tonight, before Donald Trump just made a new offer to Vladimir Putin to come to the White House. Before that, there was the White House basically leaving up in the air that maybe they would let the Kremlin depose people like yourself who've been ambassadors before to Russia. Take a listen to some of the response to that insanity.
That the administration to even entertain this shows to me how naive they are.
That the president would work with Vladimir Putin to put in danger our ambassador strikes me as almost providing aid and comfort to the enemy.
It was incredible, all right. What a very stupid idea by Putin. It's continually walking back. It's a big problem. I can't imagine the cartwheels they're doing over in Russia.
Ambassador Ginsburg, you have held this type of post. What was your view of that, which the White House is walking away from? And have you ever heard of the U.S. government trying to make that kind of deal with Russia?
Never have I ever, in all my years going back to the days that I worked for Senator Kennedy on the Hill, never have I seen any obsequiousness. The idea that Trump could call this an incredible offer and put in jeopardy, first of all, my good friend Michael McFaul, former ambassador to Russia, who during his tour of duty in Russia was subjected to the worst type of harassment by Putin and by his thugs, his family, himself, undermining the integrity, anything that represented the protection of the Vienna Convention for diplomats. Putin will stop at nothing. And by the way, may I add, the fact that Putin offered to let Mueller come over and question his agents, his military agents, only shows you that Putin knew and, in effect, recognizes that these were people who worked for him. So maybe in the end we got that little piece out of it. But let me make it very clear, Ari. The fact that this White House required people like Mike McFaul and Mr. Browder to have to worry whether or not they would be served up on a silver platter to Mr. Putin by the President of the United States is despicable.
I think it's well put, and it's one of the many things that the White House may be trying to run from tonight with the other moves it's making, which are also obviously newsworthy. The invite to the White House for Putin, and yet was a remarkable piece of statecraft over these last few days that it was even, as you say, put out there. Ambassador Ginsburg, my thanks to you for your expertise. Senator Robert Torricelli, who comes on this show, but but likes a lot of different shows, and that's your right. You're right to have that view. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.